From 2015, I was wrong. Maybe neither of my grandfathers were at Gallipoli. My father's father had been a soldier for Britain in Ireland, but he was shipped out before the Easter uprising. He was then sent to the Somme, where in artillery he discovered horses and was bit with a gambling bug. My mother's father was said to have lost his eye at Gallipoli on landing. One time my father had told me that his father had said that he had known many from Gallipoli, and my mother's father wasn't one of them. I'd understood that to mean he'd been at Gallipoli, but it wasn't what my father had said, and he hadn't corrected me. Happy families are all the same, but each dysfunctional one is unique. The placing of U.S. families into camps based on race was an abuse of power which has never gone punished. A Democrat president did it in World War II and never got to present their case for it. Was it because he wanted another term in office? A Democrat who believed in minorities but was scared of unity. While the issue is not the same, it parallels Turkey's genocide of Armenians and Assyrians and other minorities. There, too, we have no justification for what was done. It didn't begin in 1912, but in the second half of the 19th century when the Ottoman Empire was a pawn in the great game between Russia and Britain. Ottomans had traditionally worked with their minorities, but when some young Turks began to assert themselves, a new identity was formed which did not include minorities. Ataturk was not the monster behind the genocide, but must have protected them, probably to protect national cohesion. Maybe that is why the UN today endorses the worst of terrorism. On this day in 404 BC, Athens was defeated by Sparta. It would take some 2,200 years before democracy flourished again. In 775, Armenians rebelling against the Abbasids failed. In 799, Pope Leo III fled Rome for the protection of Charlemagne. In 1644, the last Ming Emperor of China, Chongzhen, committed suicide after killing his family so that they would not become prisoners of the next mob. In 1792, a highwayman became the first to be executed by guillotine. Nicolas Jacques Pelletier was caught for something, we aren't certain what, said to have involved robbery, murder, and rape, but typical of revolutionary justice, maybe none of it. He was sentenced to death in 1791, but it wasn't until March in 1792 that the Revolutionary Council agreed on the only acceptable form of execution being decapitation. But not by sword, as nobles had been decapitated that way. So the guillotine was made and placed outside a hotel in Paris in the hopes of a crowd. General Lafayette was engaged to control the crowd. A good time was had by many. On the same day, La Marseillaise, the French national anthem, was composed by Claude-Joseph Roger de Lille. In 1829, Fremantle sailed into the coast of Western Australia on board the Challenger. He declared the Swan River colony for the United Kingdom. In 1846, the Thornton Affair, where Captain Thornton with 80 cavalry was beaten by Mexican forces with 1,600 cavalry, resulted in the Mexican-American War of 1846-48. Many thousands would die, and Mexico lost her northern territories. The territory gained for the U.S. included the Rio Grande Valley and California, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, and so on. The Whigs opposed the peace and expansion in much the same way Democrats deplored democracy in Iraq. In 1901, New York became the first city to demand license plates for cars. In 1916, the Easter Rebellion began in Ireland. In 1945, the US and Soviet armies met up, dividing the German forces. On the same day as Germany surrendered in Italy, Mussolini attempted escape of custody. Also, German forces left Finland. In 1951, Chinese forces withdrew after encountering Australian and Canadian troops at Kapyong in Korea. In 1953, Crick and Watson published on the helical structure of DNA. In 1954, Bell Laboratories invented the first practical solar cell. 1961, Robert Noyce was granted a patent for an integrated circuit. In 1982, Israel completed her withdrawal from the Sinai in respect to Camp David Accords. So any day now there will be peace. In 1983, an idealistic schoolgirl wanting peace was invited to visit the Soviet Union. She died tragically from a plane crash not long after her successful trip. Samantha Smith meant well.